So, Mr. Chair, just took a look at our directors that are online, and it looks like we do have quorum. And just noted that there is a notice from our communications people that said we're going live, and I think we are live on YouTube right now. So we're good to go when you are.
All right, let's do it. Welcome everybody to our Board of Directors meeting of Thursday, November 25th. I think the plan is this will be our last board meeting for the year, but we'll see how things go. 1 o'clock, I'll ask for a motion for the adoption of the agenda, please. Director Windover, Director Hooper, anyone opposed to adopting the agenda? Done, thank you. Is there any declaration of pecuniary interest from anyone on today's agenda?
No.
Seeing none, thank you. Just before we start, I think, Mark, you want to introduce, well, we want you to introduce a new staff person. Danielle's joining us, so I'll turn it over to you to tell us a little bit about Danielle. Hello.
Yeah, great.
Hi, Danielle.
And, yeah, if you can see Danielle, Danielle's got her camera on, so you can see her there. She's a pretty bright young lady, and we're very happy to welcome her to our team at Kawarthas Conservation. And she looks pretty young, but she has actually a pretty good range of experience to date, which is really tremendous. She's our new landowner and community support person. But she's got lots of experience from the Friends of the Rouge Watershed, Ripley's Aquarium, and Natural Curiosity. So in her previous experience, she's had a lot of experience in hosting community hikes, a lot of work in stewardship and planting events, and certainly has planted quite a number of trees, which is great. It really falls in line with the work that she'll be doing with us. And like I said, she's pretty bright. She has a Master's of Applied Science from Ryerson and a environmental technician diploma from Sediment. So we're very happy to welcome Danielle Marcoux-Hunter, and we think we'll see some great things from her. So certainly like to welcome her to the team.
Welcome, Danielle. Do you want to say hi? Do you want to say anything, or you just take those compliments and keep them to yourself?
Take it easy. Not as young as I look. Thank you, Mark. But it is great to be here. I just wanted to introduce myself before I head out and leave you to the meeting. I've had a really great week and a few days joining the team here at Kawarthas Conservation. I've been able to get in the field and start meeting some of our landowners and farmers. And I'm sure I'll have the opportunity to connect with many of you very soon. So thanks again for the warm welcome.
Thank you. Welcome to the team, and we all look forward to working with you. Thanks.
Welcome, Danielle.
All right, take care. Okay, we'll move on to approval of the minutes from the last Board of Directors meeting, October 28th.
I'll move that.
Director Smith, seconded by Director Dunn. Any questions, comments on the minutes? Seeing none. Anyone opposed to adopting the minutes?
No.
All good, thank you. Okay, we'll consider those passed. There's no business arising from the minutes. Catherine, I keep hearing you. I'm just wondering if you can put your mic on mute. I can hear you. Thank you. Business arising from the minutes, none. Deputations, we have none. We'll move right into item 6, which is a presentation on the Lake Management Plan implementation. And I will turn it over to Emma to either do it or make the introductions. Over to you, Emma. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm just trying to get this sorted out. Okay, just bear with me. Okay, hopefully you can see the front sheet there. So that's all good. So yeah, so I'm really delighted to present to you today the second part, I would say, of the lake implementation work. So this is 3 years worth of work, and today we're talking really about the science side of things. Christy did a great job of talking through the stewardship part, so this is the complementary piece to go with it. So just to provide an overview again, I think you saw this slide the last time in the presentation, but these are the components of the implementation action plan. So we have the Shoreline Programme, the Urban Programme, the Rural and the General Programme as well. So there's pieces in there which are very relevant to my department. So the policy and research in particular, as I said, the science side. So those are the pieces we'll be talking about today. So the first project or programme within this is the sediment and erosion control. So the purpose of this project was to increase local expertise and application of erosion and sediment control standards when we're looking at developments and site alteration projects, for example. So the idea was to share training and expert resources between staff, municipal partners and contractors. So in 2019, we held a symposium at Fenland Falls where we saw 10 guest speakers join us. We had over 20 vendors participate and over 100 attendees. So attendees were a cross-section of public, contractors and municipal partners and permitting agencies as well. So staff also undertook a number of site visits. So this is really to gather more knowledge about construction sites, and the kinds of deficiencies we saw were lack of perimeter fencing, no catch basin cover, and very poor drainage, soil outlet protection. So we'll be taking all these learnings and feeding those back into that sharing of knowledge across the jurisdiction. So we also delivered a lunch and learn in 2019 on silt socks and fibre rolls. And we're holding another one this month by a company called Nilax, and they're going to be talking about appropriate erosion control techniques of construction sites. And this is related to lake shorelines. So as part of this project, we will have produced 4 videos looking at how to install and maintain straw bale in-stream check dams, light duty silt fence, fibre rolls and erosion control blankets. And fact sheets will be produced as well. We're currently working on those with a company to make those look professional, and those will be available to permit applicants as well. And they're going to be on the same kind of subjects as the videos. Okay, so just quickly move on. So for the rural programme, we have our investigative upstream monitoring programme. So the intention of this was to reduce data gaps by performing more comprehensive water quality and data collection in order to identify areas of water quality degradation and plan for remediation or restoration through our stewardship department. So data collections performed monthly during the ice-free period of May to November. And this year, further work was undertaken to understand hotspots during heavy rain events. So this is where we are seeing elevated turbidity and total suspended solids, and basically seeing reduction in fish health, loss of aquatic habitat and damaging aesthetics. So a final report of the findings will be used in planning enforcement and also stewardship activities. And I know Tanner is working hard to pull together lots of different reports from all of this work, and that will be handed over to the stewardship team to assist with identifying active sources of erosion and locations for action. So moving on to the Shoreline Programme, we have our aquatic plant control project. So this project is studying the impact of aerators on the growth of nuisance aquatic plants and to evaluate the impact on physical, chemical and biological parameters of nearshore waters. So the first year of this project involved kind of the project design and securing permits from the permitting authorities. So this year was the first year where we deployed aerators in the field. So the partners that are involved include Parks Canada, Trent University, Fleming College, Lakehead University and Carleton University. And this year we were able to secure funding from the Great Lakes Local Action Fund to pay for 3 aerators on this programme. And we've seen significant interest in this project from the public and shoreline residents in particular. And we are currently working on an NSERC grant application with Carleton University, Parks Canada, Ontario Technical University and Rideau Valley Conservation Authority. And the whole purpose of this grant is to expand on the programme of work and include more sites. So if you don't know what NSERC is, it's the Natural Sciences and Engineering Research Council. So just wanted to mention that as well. Okay, next Shoreline Programme. So this is linked to our stewardship programme. So this is beach monitoring. So the beach monitoring aspect of the project aims to determine E. coli and nutrient concentrations through sampling on the beach and surrounding areas. So this is a partnership between Kawarthas Conservation, the Health Unit, and Kawarthas Lakes Parks and Recreation Department. So the work that staff undertook complement the health unit sampling regime throughout the summer months. Reports have been produced for both of these beaches. Omimi has been shared and discussed with city staff, and Bond Street Beach will be the next one to bring to city staff for review and discussion on potential actions. So this work goes directly to the Stewardship Programme of beach restoration activities, and we work very closely with the Parks Department of City as well. So our Nearshore Programme, the purpose of this multi-year, multi-lake project was to determine hotspots in the nearshore areas of the lakes and to fill in data gaps identified in the lake management plans. And this data all provides a baseline of information to work from. The information then goes on to inform stewardship priorities and activities. So shoreline residents are particularly interested in this programme as many draw their drinking water from the lakes. In 2020, staff were unable to support the programme due to the limitations of COVID. However, Ontario Technical University continued working with the volunteers. So this year we were successful in our grant application to the Great Lakes Local Action Fund and secured over $38,000. This money helped to support a student stipend at Ontario Tech and also paid for lab fees and some travel costs. We were also able to expand this programme due to the funding and to look at the invasive starry stonewort. Volunteers offered help in gathering samples so the movement of the species could be tracked across the Great Lakes network. Earlier in the programme in 2019, we also secured $15,000 from the McLean Foundation, and that helped to support lab fees for this project. So we're currently working through all the data from that. The volunteers have been given kind of average information on average water temperature and phosphorus levels across the lake. So they all have that information now, and we're just kind of pulling up that all together to provide in one consolidated report as well. So the Lake Skough Environmental Management Plan. So this project originated as a result of recommendations and identification of data gaps from the original Lake Skough Environmental Management Plan, which was developed in 2010. So this annual project maintains a level of monitoring and provides a basis for evaluating implementation activities, identifying hotspots for future stewardship priorities, and providing recommendations for land use planning. So this year, a new collaboration took place to better understand microplastics, which is an emerging contaminant of concern. This partnership with Trent University helps us better understand where they originate from and where they will settle out across the watershed. So we co-located the sampling sites with our existing monitoring programme, but Trent University also did some sediment samplings in the lake on 6 sites as well. So a summary report of this will be produced in 2022. Hopefully you're still with me. Watershed planning. So we have, I've just demonstrated there's 2 different aspects to this. So we have the City of Kawarthas Lake shoreline policy work. So the purpose of the shoreline planning and policy work for the city was to provide expert research and background information to support the municipality in review of shoreline land use policies. So this project was delivered over 2 years, with the first year dedicated to providing a summary of approaches being undertaken across Ontario currently in relation to land use policy around lakes. The second year looked at the rationale and need for enhanced policy. Both reports have been shared with the city planning staff and have been referenced as part of the consultation process in the recent rural area zoning bylaw review. So the intention of the Durham Watershed Planning projects was a little different. This was about providing up-to-date information to support quicker turnaround times for planning file reviews. This looked in detail at, for example, natural heritage information. This project was extended with deliverables in 2022 to include things like evaluating and confirming location of unevaluated mapped wetlands, updating mapping tools, and addressing gaps in ecologically significant groundwater recharge areas. There's a tongue twister almost. And as part of this project, we took 382 samples to verify stream permanency as well. Okay. Lake Skough Enhancement Project. So some of you may be familiar with this project already. So our involvement with this project is to provide technical and project management support to the Healthy Lake Skough Steering Committee with their project to revitalise Port Perry Bay. Proposed strategies involve a combination of activities such as dredging, creating a berm, and constructed wetland to improve habitat and aquatic plant harvesting. There are a number of activities involved, including environmental assessment processes, public input, and permitting. So this year, a human health risk assessment was undertaken by GHD consultants. This was at the request of the federal agencies. While the conservation updated the basic impact analysis permit aspect, we also undertook a terrestrial vegetation survey and an invasive species management plan. We also undertook Indigenous engagement with Hiawatha First Nation, Curve Lake First Nation, Mississauga of Skough Island First Nation, and Chippewas of Rama First Nation. Okay, nearly there. Lake Dalrymple Lake Management Plan. So this is the first year of the 4-year lake management plan. And year 1 has gone really well, with the team initiating 2 working group meetings with the community. These were held in July and October, and the meetings highlighted 23 issues of concern by stakeholders. I have the list here. I'll just pick out a few. So for example, we've got high runoff potential into lake from shallow soils, out-of-date shoreline septic systems, overall water quality in the lake, and receding water levels over time. So sampling has been undertaken on the lake and within the surrounding tributaries, and this is a new lake, an area of study for the team. So it's been interesting to see how it reacts, particularly when we have high rainfall levels. And to publicise the work, the communications team have been doing a fantastic job issuing media releases and providing support in developing a web page dedicated to the management plan so people can find information directly related to the project. Okay. So finally, just to summarise all the different pieces, I think I'm not going to read this out before you can see what's on there, but I think what is obvious to me is that we have a lot of support from our residents and partners for the work that we do, and that we couldn't achieve what we have without their assistance. So it's certainly more challenging to provide tangible outcomes from monitoring activities, but the work the team does is essential for evidence-based decision-making across the watershed. It also highlights areas of sensitivity that need to be protected and areas that require intervention to prevent further degradation. So a big focus for the team is making the data and information we gather more available for people in a way that is meaningful to them. We still have work to do, but we are making great progress on that. So I just finally want to say a big thank you to the team and the wider organisational team for helping us to deliver these projects and programmes. Thank you.
Thanks, Emma. Obviously some great work being done. Appreciate the update. Anybody, there we go. Anybody have any questions for Emma or the team on the presentation? Seeing none. One of your pages there, Emma, I think the nearshore monitoring with the volunteers, there was a name or something, Starry Stowart. What is that? Is that a person or is...
So through, no, it's not a person. It's so some would view it as an aquatic plant, but it's more of an algae, and it's becoming extremely invasive across the lakes, and it is a worry because it really blocks everything out, so it harms the whole aquatic environment. And so we're kind of monitoring that through the Great Lakes Network, and there's a whole app that you can upload information to in terms of where you see it. So there's a number of lakes in this area that are really worried about it, particularly shoreline residents.
Okay, appreciate it. I was going to say if it was a person, I was going to have a chat with their mother because that's just cruel. Councillor Hooper, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Sorry, I didn't have my hand up right away, but in regards to Lake Skough, which is the closest to my area, how are we making any headway with the situation in regards to the plant life that's growing constantly? Are we making any headway with that at all, the program out there?
So Lake Skough is challenging because of its I would say topography, because it is a shallow lake, and you do generally get a lot more aquatic vegetation growth. We are continuing to look at ways of reducing that, and certainly that is on our minds for the future in terms of what innovation we can apply to that. I might ask Tanner actually to join us on the call and see if he can just provide a little bit of input, because I know he's been out on Lake Skough a lot recently, and he can probably provide a much better technical input than I can on this one. Tanner, have you got anything else you can add to that?
Just want to echo what you said. You know, Lake Skough is a challenging lake, and in which there's lots of nutrient input, and then with the shallowness and this beautiful sunshine during the summertime, it does really promote that growth. From the short time I've been here, we've tried to implement the Lake Skough Enhancement Project, which does have a aquatic vegetation management plan associated with it. And this year, as well as the previous years, Kawarthas Conservation has worked with the Township of Skough to gain a permit from Trent Severn Waterway to harvest the aquatic vegetation outside of Port Perry.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Thanks, Emma. Thank you, Tanner, for your explanation. I appreciate that very much. One other further question. When you talk about funding from Durham Tech, is that UOIT or Durham College, I should say?
As was UOIT, yes.
Okay, good. Thank you.
They changed their name.
That's what I know as that I know it as.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Director Smith, go ahead. You had a question?
Yes, thank you. Through you, Chair Latham. I just wondered if we could get talking about aquatic vegetation. Could we get an update on Phragmites and which I guess maybe I consider it aquatic vegetation. Maybe it really isn't, but is there any hope of controlling it?
So through you, I'm going to ask actually Brett to jump in on this call because he is our aquatic biologist and can probably provide some great insight onto that one as well, if you don't mind.
Hello, everybody, and yeah, thanks for the question. That's a very tough one. So the Phragmites is, for those who might not know, is that really tall grass you see in the road ditches. And it's exceptionally well at taking advantage of degraded conditions, salty ditches and disturbed areas and that type of thing. And usually when you see, Ontario Hydro or Hydro One go through, not long after, you see a big stand of Phragmites show up. And here at Kawarthas Conservation, we have managed local patches throughout the years with partners, and we've helped identify where certain stands are, particularly on the lake as well. But really across the region, including all partners involved in the management of it, we really haven't been making that much headway. To make a long story short, it's still rampant. Where they have had some success is the province has done some spraying on some of the provincial roads. And I believe south of us, Northumberland County has done some spraying as well. And that seems to have some success, but it's very challenging plant for sure.
Thank you. I live on the fringe of the Beaver River wetlands, and it's getting a real toehold in there. And of course, as an old farmer, I would have solved it 10 years ago by using a spray that nobody wants me to use, but it would have solved the problem too. So anyway, I just wondered if there was an actual spray that is working, and I'm glad to hear that there is progress being made that way. Thank you.
Any other questions for Emma or the team? Okay, I think we're covered. Thank you, folks. Very much appreciated. I'll just ask for a motion to receive the presentation, please. Director Windover, second by Director Dunn. Anyone opposed to receiving the presentation? Thank you. We'll consider that passed. Okay, let's go to item 7.1, permits issued by staff. Ron Warren for October. I don't know, not sure where you go from there, Ron, but I don't know if there's anything you want to draw our attention to. Please do.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would just say September was another busy month for permitting. We had 48 permits. Very happy to report that all of them this time were reviewed within the prescribed timeframes to make sure the application is complete and to get them out the door. And we're happy with that. And just to reiterate, it's not just the the planning or even just the permitting. It's everybody that is involved in those numbers too. So I'll just leave it at that if there are any questions.
No, appreciate that. I think it's kudos all around to everybody involved. So thank you for the update.
Thank
Any questions for Ron on the report? I just need a motion to receive the permitting report, please. Director Kiesebrink, second by Director Hooper. Anyone opposed to receiving? Done. Thank you. Item 7.2 is a permit application. Thanks, Ron. Is a permit application for a boathouse. Oh, this is you too. Langdon Lane. I guess it's beyond our policy, so you're bringing it to the board. So if you want to give us a quick overview, and we'll see where they want to go.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, it's Langdon Lane, so it's a two-story boathouse, which is larger than usual, and it has a slightly larger area than we also allow by permitting. So we're talking about 12.5 meters, square meters, too large. The applicant has confirmed that that second floor will not be utilized for any habitable space. And because the boathouse itself is actually 0.2 meters above the floodplain elevation, we're talking about a very minimal effect on flood storage for all of Lake Sturgeon. So it's relatively insignificant, but as you say, it doesn't meet the board approved policy, so we bring it back to the board for your approval.
Thank you. Any questions for Ron on that report? Director Hooper, go ahead. You're on mute, Ron. You're on mute. That's okay.
Sorry, I have to learn to do that more frequently. So they've assured you that there's not going to be living quarters above that? Is that correct?
Yes, and there is no plumbing.
That was my next question. Thank you. That's all I wanted to ask. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I will just add, Director Hooper, that our building department, obviously a building permit would have to be issued on top of this permit, and there are constrictions on height, a height limitation to prevent habitation in the top floor of a boathouse around Sturgeon Lake. It's in the zoning and stuff. So this is a check because it's in the floodplain. There's another check when it comes to the building permit process, because I just dealt with one of these a few months ago. So I think the constraints are there that there won't be able, with no plumbing, it makes it kind of tough.
Thanks, Mr. Chair.
You bet. Director Kiesebrink, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to confirm, I think I read in the report that the reason for the larger size is to accommodate a boat that they already have. Is that correct?
Through the chair, that is my understanding. Yes, correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we have a recommended resolution that permit application submitted pursuant to Ontario Regulation 182/06, regulation of development, interference with wetlands and alterations to shorelines and watercourses to allow for the construction of a two-story 92.39 meter squared boathouse at Langdon Lane, City of Kawartha Lakes be approved. Does anybody want to move that? Director Kiesebrink will move that. Did I see a hand? No, I lost. Okay, Director Windover, you'll second that. Any further questions for Ron? Anyone opposed to that motion? Okay, consider that passed. Thank you. Thanks, Ron. Okay, 7.3 is the Conservation Authority Client Services and Streamlining Initiative. Ron, we're making them work today. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, it's just briefly the Conservation Authority's Client Service Streamlining Initiative. It started about a year before COVID, April of 2019, and it's the Conservation Authority trying to be, trying to react to the construction community, trying to get ahead of some of the things that the provincial government was looking for, trying to improve client service accountability, the speed of approvals while still protecting public health and safety, but also reducing the red tape and the regulatory burden that we always heard about. And this is just a brief report to talk about how we have provided some of the things in the checklist that were required. Things like having our municipal memorandums of understanding for our planning services available to the public, generally through our website. Having our approval guidelines, our policies, our application requirements, all of our fees, and our service standards commitment available, screening maps, have these things available to the public. Of course, during COVID, we've realized how this is more important than ever to have these things available online and immediately. We've always done the annual report and review timelines, and you saw earlier, just a few minutes ago, that's working well for us, and it's really just a response to that type of thing. Nothing more than that.
Excellent, thank you. Any questions for Ron on that report? Okay, I'm wondering, Catherine, Director Moore, if you'll move that the update on the CA client service and streamlining initiative be received. Are you okay with that?
I am. I've been
Thank you.
raising my hand, but you don't see it, so I'm going to have to speak up, I guess.
You're just popping in and off the screen, so I
Okay.
see it sometimes and then it disappears. So
Oh,
we'll do our
okay.
best, but I'll get you to move that. Thank you. And
You're
can I get a
welcome.
seconder? Director Smith, thank you. Any other questions? Anyone opposed to that motion? Thank you. That's passed. 7.4, thanks, Ron. 7.4 is our third quarter interim financial statement. I believe John Lucas is going to take the lead on this one. Hello, Jonathan. How are you?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that's correct. Thank you.
Go ahead, please.
Okay, through you, Mr. Chair, good afternoon to the board. I'll be providing a brief update on our financial position as of September 30th. I'll start with our general operational update, and then I'll roll into our general and special benefiting projects updates. So overall, we're pleased to present a modest surplus of $26,000 at the end of the third quarter. I would say this is a result of fiscal management and sustainable investments into our technologies and efficiencies throughout the beginning, middle, and now what we're hoping is the tail end of this pandemic. Throughout our general operating, we continue to experience conditions favorable for self-generated revenues. So this would include our planning and permitting team, which Ron has been touching on and seeing, larger than usual numbers for traffic on permits coming through. So we are ahead of our revenue targets in this realm. Large scale fill, we are lagging currently at September 30th, but are anticipating an uptick in the fourth quarter. With some clearances expected, or they might have already happened. Through the IWM department, things are nothing notable other than we've kept our ministry funding at a stable level. I recall 2 years ago it was slashed on 50%. So we've been seeing consistent funding there. And then through stewardship and conservation lands, we've seen favorable revenue impacts, primarily through some unanticipated awards, I would say, through we were designated a filming location for a Hollywood film set. So that brought in some unanticipated revenues. And there was really a very minimal impact to the public enjoyment of our land. So that was great. On top of that, we've been awarded with 4 habitat restoration projects that have gone through smoothly. And we are just wrapping up, I believe, some final reporting on those. And then as the pandemic continues, and we've all seen increased traffic at all of our areas, with Ken Reed being one of the few that has a paid parking program due to the additional amenities that it offers. So we're well on target with revenues for parking fees, which are usually there to offset our increased costs we've been seeing with road deterioration, washout, litter, and keeping our area clean for the public who visits. I would like to note, you'll see on the lead page a expenditure of approximately $160,000 for land donation and disposal. I just want to note there's no cash impact to this. This is just simply a PSAS, or public sector accounting standard. As we write or dispose of the asset from a balance sheet, there's just an offset entry, which creates this expenditure. But no cash impact or anything to operations. Moving on to our special projects, these are slightly behind budget targets, but we anticipate the revenue will be deferred into to 2022. Our proposed 2022 budget does it account for this, as there was a spillover from 2020 due to provincial regulations that limited our ability to go out into the public, work with landowners, hire contractors. That rolled into 2021, and we're continued to see that into 2022 with the demand for contractors to get out there in the field. Some landowners aren't quite ready to move forward with projects yet, and those kinds of aspects. The floodplain mapping project is being funded currently by deferred revenues we have, and a grant through the NDMP National Disaster Mitigation Program. We had 2 projects for the city to wrap up, and we completed McLaren's back in April with just Finland Falls South that we are responsible for completing. The good news is we have received a project extension to March 31st just for funding aspects. So we are still getting that matching funding from the federal government, which is great. You'll note that there's been no expenditures through our general benefiting projects to date. Mark had provided a brief update at City Council, but I'll just touch on it here. With the basically Amazon experience we're looking to provide for our permits, updates of where they're at, have they been reviewed? The funding was a bit short of what we required this year, so we're just going to defer into next year, and we'll have a sufficient budget to put that project into place. Digitization's been a 5-year project, and key to our efficiencies and accessing files throughout the pandemic, but just with the limitations on office visits and moved around the office for finding files to digitize, that project's been a bit deferred. We recently did send out about 15 boxes and are continuing through into fiscal 2022. So I believe that covers most of the generic, any notable items for our 2021 to September 30th. So I will just conclude there and pass it or leave it there. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Jonathan. Are you comfortable with where we are in the third quarter from a financial perspective? No red flags, obviously?
We're quite comfortable with our current position, and we're anticipating that this will see a modest, similar or around the same area surplus at the end of the year. So we're tracking into a good position for sure.
Do you think 2022 will be sort of our catch-up year with some of our deferred revenue, deferred projects? We should have less of those going into 2023, just depending on where the pandemic goes, obviously. But do you see that as a bit of a catch-up year for some of the deferred projects?
Yeah, absolutely. We have, I know for a lot of the stewardship projects we have worked through, we have found contractors to complete projects. It's just that they can't get the boots on the ground this year, or not quite in the same timeframes. And we had built a budget for next year with revenue items of deferred revenue to be utilized to cover those expenditures. So you're correct in that.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah.
Anyone else have any questions for Jonathan? Director Kiesebrink, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much, Mr. Lucas, for your report. On page 2, under corporate services, you mentioned that we are on target for expenditures with the exception of reduced direct labor costs because there is a 1.5 full-time equivalent of vacancies throughout the year. Can you give us a little bit more information about the staffing vacancies? And I mean, obviously everyone's working hard, you're meeting the targets in spite of that, but what are the plans to fill those vacancies so that the work can continue?
Through you, Mr. Chair, corporate services, specifically the 1.5 is 1/2 position was a position that was filled. And that was our financial and people support role. So that was just bringing back another person into the finance team. And our other role is IT. So currently we are relying on a third-party business for a lot of our day-to-day IT needs. So we're looking at filling that position. So that would be the current staffing gap right now. Yeah.
Further through you, Mr. Chair, are you finding that that it's difficult to source the type of staffing that with the level of expertise that are needed for the IT? Or is this an ongoing search, and what kind of timeline do you think before that position will be filled so that this work can continue?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'll answer this to the best of my ability. I'm not a direct I don't directly hire staff, but I believe, to my understanding, the job description's underway, and we'd be looking at putting something out within probably the next 4 to 6 weeks. I know we have the holidays coming up, so it's usually a bit of an unusual time to look for candidates. So it could be early into next year, but if I'll see if Wanda wants to add anything onto that for sure.
Sure. Through you, Mr. Chair. The position is being developed right now. I'm using products, job descriptions from other conservation authorities. Their business is suitable to our business and what we have to accomplish. So the job description is in process, and we anticipate that the job posting will be out by the end of the year, and initiating the interviews in the first part of the year. As far as movement of staffing, I'm not certain if the IT staff are moving within their careers as much as other positions are.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions for Jonathan or Wanda? Okay, can I get a motion then that the interim financial statements to September 30th, 2021 be received, please? Director Hooper, seconded by Director Windover. Thank you. You moved on my screen there, so I saw the hand, then you disappeared. So seconded. Anyone opposed to that motion to receive? Okay, we'll consider that passed. Thank you. 7.5 is our CAO report. Thanks, Jonathan, for that. Appreciate it. CAO report. I'll turn it over to Mark. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll provide a brief summary of some of the work that's been going on. A lot of the work that's been going on in corporate services has been tied to the provincial regulations, transition plans, inventories, getting set up for that work. And you do have one of those products on the action items for today's agenda. There's been a lot of work trying to maintain consistency in the products as we move forward, so that municipalities that share conservation authorities, which is pretty much almost every municipality except for maybe one or two, that there's some similarities in those, so that no one's confused about what's going on. So the next challenge, of course, after the transition plans is the inventory, and trying to make sure that the inventory of programs looks similar amongst all the authorities and scalable amongst all the activities that we do. And of course, pandemic response continues to be a pretty major item for us as we move forward. And some of the work that's been going on in communications and specifically source water is pretty interesting. So my thanks to the chair and a couple of our members of the board for providing some material for this. We have a source water protection sign video series where there's a heightened emphasis on the signage that we see on the provincial highways and some of our local roads regarding source water protection, just highlighting that there's a recognition between the actions that we do and the impact on our source water. So some great work that was done there. In the report, I identify all the people that were a part of that initiative. And the other thing that's been going on, which is pretty exciting, is our partnership with the Fenelon Falls Brewing Company is getting some profile in one of the big magazines, and we have another partnership that's been developed with a local business regarding some marketing promotion. So that will go back into supporting our programs, and I think that's great and a little bit innovative as well. And my thanks to John Chambers for his work on striking these important relationships for us. A lot of work, as you can see, on finance, not only day to day, but third quarter and preparation for year end. Year end's already upon us. It's hard to believe the year's already over, but a lot of work that's going on there. You did meet Danielle, which is great. She's our new landowner community support. We do have a couple other positions that we're currently advertising for or in the process of hiring, which includes an engineer and a special projects assistant for stewardship. Planning and regulations, again, pretty busy in that area. And I think the one thing that I want to really highlight is that the volume of complaints is certainly quite high through this year, and it still continues into the fall as we see some activities occurring on the landscape. So so our enforcement officer is following up on those, and no doubt you're probably hearing some of the same. So we are following up with that. Source water has been pretty busy as we gear up for some of the changes to the source protection plan. With the source protection committee, there's some new technical rules that will impact on some policies. So the source protection committees are kind of ramping up on the policy side of things, and on the risk management official side of things, there's the risk management officials and the risk management plans with landowners is starting to get to the point where agreements need to be struck, or we start to follow a little bit more of a prescriptive process, which is outlined in the Act, which is geared more towards the enforcement side of things. So, so some properties are trending towards that line, but we're trying to ensure that there's still the good negotiations that are continuing, and try and address it that way before addressing it through some of the more enforcement type measures. So. There's been lots of work going on in terms of some of the projects that have been going on, and you can see a number of items there with the OMAFRA projects and the Bring Back the Fish. Forestry projects are also underway with our forestry technician Taylor, and so that's going well as well. Lots of work on the water funds for Durham and City of Kawarthas Lakes, which is pretty exciting. Always nice to see some important projects going into the ground that have a little bit of incentive funding, which we find is really helping out. A little bit of an update there that's provided. Our conservation areas are busy as always. And I think one thing I'd like to highlight is Windy Ridge. We see a lot of hiking in that area as well as Ken Reed. So it's becoming a fairly popular spot, some good vistas and some short hikes, which is kind of nice just to get out and do a short little area. So we've been working on the Talking Forest app in those locations, and a little bit of a word scramble as well for that for our community. East Cross Forest. My understanding is there's a change in provincial legislation, which seems to be impacting on one of our properties, and that is that motorized vehicles can use road allowances. So we are seeing in Durham East Cross Forest that has resulted in a lot of off-roading activity where the road allowance is less defined, and so they're making it into our property, and then once they're in there, they kind of run around a little bit, and so that is creating a little bit of an enforcement issue for us at present. And in terms of integrated watershed management, I think a pretty successful summer of a lot of volunteer activity. Certainly a lot of help from our volunteers to investigate a number of different things, which really helps us out in terms of identifying what's going on around the lakes, and kind of being in multiple spots at one time, which is actually really hard for us and our staff. So really thankful to volunteers for assisting in that. And with that, what I'll do is I'll just end it there and maybe see if there's any questions, Mr. Chair.
Thanks, Mark. Appreciate that. Always good to get your update. Director Kieserbrink, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you so much, Mr. CAO, for this wonderful report. I was really excited to hear that the Pigeon River bridge is finally going in. That's hard to not have that complete. Can you talk a little bit about the timelines? It says before the end of the year, so just to give us a bit more information.
Yeah, well, I can certainly start out, and maybe I'll pass it over to Christy, who can certainly has a lot more intimate details of that. I know staff have been working hard to get it, and certainly have had some challenges to getting that in, and are trying to drive it so that we do get that bridge in, because it does allow for that whole network of trails to open up. So maybe I'll just pass it on to Christy there.
Thanks, Mark. Through you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, it has been a very long and arduous process to try and get this bridge in. And one of the challenges that we're having is, of course, we have this huge intact bridge that we have to take down through some very narrow trails, and trying to do it at a time when we're not going to damage them, because it's a very wet area, because it is going right across the river, so that those banks are very soft, especially at this time of year when we have a lot of rain. So most of the challenges we've had is with being able to get contractors that have the time and the proper equipment and the right time of year in order to come out and do it. So we now have a couple of contractors that are lined up, and they've gone out and taken a look at the site. We're just waiting for the final quotes, and hopefully they're in line with what we have available for the budget in order to get that bridge in. So we do own a bridge, it's just not in place yet.
Okay, that sounds great. Two further questions, if I could, Mr. Chair. I'm interested to hear that you want to do a farm talking, like we have the Talking Forest app. So how did that come about, and how will it be utilized, and how far reaching, or is it just a particular farm? Can you tell us more about that?
So through you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, this came about as part of our partnership with OMAFRA. So they've been funding some demonstration sites in the Talbot River subwatershed. And one of the discussions we're having right now, we were supposed to do a farm tour where people could just, drive out and walk through the farms and get a look at some of the projects that we've been doing. And unfortunately with COVID and, a lot of landowners still have some concerns around having groups of people out on their property. And that's something that I can totally, sympathize with. So we talked about doing a virtual farm tour. So one of those sort of everybody gets online and does it that way. And then through discussions with OMAFRA, we thought, there might be an opportunity if we, with the similar technology of what we have with the Talking Forest app, and just have some audio clips so that when people can drive past the farm for those properties where we have a demonstration site that's visible from the road, they could drive to the farm and just sort of pull off to the side of the road and then listen to the app, and it would talk them through all the different pieces. So we're still working on that to make sure that it's appropriate for the landowners. And, there's some concerns around traffic on those roads as well, especially through the winter. So it might not be something that we do until the spring once we have, greater access to those roads. We certainly don't want to create a situation where we're, blocking traffic and stuff like that. But it is something that we're considering, and we're just going to be talking to the landowners and seeing whether or not it's something that they would appreciate. So.
Very cool. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions on the CEO's update? Seeing none, I need a motion to receive the CEO's update, please. Director Dunn, second by Director Moore.
Yes.
Thank you. Yes, thank you. Anyone opposed to that motion to receive? We'll consider that passed. Thank you. 7.6, Mark, is correspondence. Anything you want to highlight? Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I think for this one, I won't highlight a whole lot other than it is the Conservation Ontario Council minutes. And I did provide an update on those activities in my last CIO report. So, so we're all updated. Cole's notes is some of the bylaws that you're seeing that are being updated. That was one of the action items coming out of those meetings, and a lot of discussion on inventories and transition plans and CA regs. So, so those are some of the big items that have come out of that meeting.
Thank you. Just want everybody to note that I've been faithfully attending those meetings. So just as a sidebar, thank you. The ones Director Smith failed to notify me how long some of them were, but we're good. Any questions on the correspondence?
Oh, darn, really sorry.
Yeah, oh, darn. Yeah, I bet. Any questions on the correspondence? Can I get a motion to receive the correspondence, please? Director Kieserbrink, second by Director Smith. Anyone opposed? That's passed. Thank you. Action items 8.1. Mark, First Nations Acknowledgement. I know you've been working on this for a little while, so go ahead.
Yep, thank you. And This is a pretty exciting kind of point, I think, for us, is to have the First Nation acknowledgement coming forward to the board for consideration and endorsement. And just off the top, just like to thank Jeff Forbes from the Mississaugas of Skough Island First Nation for helping me out on this this journey, which has been quite exciting, and certainly is opening my eyes quite a bit. And I see just a lot of what their perspectives are with the land really fits well with what we do, and also how we communicate with each other in our community. So lots of great tie-ins, and Jeff was kind enough to bring in Matthew Stevens as well, who's kind of like their storyteller guru, land kind of partnership gentleman, and he's been tremendous as well in informing what you have before you. So the proposal that we have before you is a primary acknowledgement, and this is a relatively recent kind of iteration of the land acknowledgement that's provided through the Mississaugas of Skough Island First Nation. So recent as in a couple of months, or not even that much. And it's tailored a little bit to our watershed. So you'll see that in the attachment, and it's the first component in there. And what we wanted to do, and this is due to some of the challenges that were brought forward from our directors, which I thank you for, which was let's make sure it's meaningful. And so what we're looking at is the land acknowledgement, or acknowledgement in general, because I think it's more about the culture as well, not just the land. And so we've looked at an augmentation to the acknowledgement statement, which is through a First Nation teaching and then a reflection statement. And this came through from discussions with Jeff and with Matthew, where they posed a question after a discussion, and I was like, I know what you're doing. That's really good. It makes you think. Yes, as Matthew Stevens is the cultural coordinator, and so I thought that was a really powerful way of trying to make sure that we're not only receiving something, but also asking ourselves and thinking about it a little bit deeper than just reading a statement. So the First Nation teachings are presented in concert with the land acknowledgement, and then you'll see a kind of tailored reflection statement as well that would complement that. And that the intent behind this is that it could be varied. So you'd have the kind of base acknowledgement, and then you'd be able to tailor it for the scenarios that you might be dealing with, whether it be a community advisory meeting, a stakeholder meeting, something where you're trying to look at sustainability or framing kind of the meeting in a right way, or trying to, in the end, it's really about acknowledging culture. And the more we learn about it, I think the better we can kind of move forward with almost pure intent, if you want to call it. So the one request I'll mention is that the First Nation teachings are sacred to First Nations, and so the request is that they be said with authenticity, and I think that's a really important part. So they're not just to be read; they're to be said with intent, and that is the one request. So what we see is that these will be integrated into our meetings, and so this would be board meetings as well as some of the other stakeholder meetings that we have, different reports that we write to our website, and try and keep things fresh as a whole. So that's the intent behind it. And maybe I'll just leave it there and see if there's any questions that you might have.
Thanks, Mark. I was just wondering if Jeff, do you want to offer any insight into the process or what we've come up with here from your perspective, sir? Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Haneen, everyone. I just want to say it was great working with Mark on this. Both myself and Matthew were very intrigued in working with Mark on this project, and very glad that you guys reached out to the MSIFN to look at this, and after many meetings too, Mark? It wasn't just one. We hashed this out, and I think it's a little custom, and it can be changed, to each meeting that you're going to as well. So that being said, I just want to say miigwech, which is thank you. And looking forward to hearing and seeing how it's used throughout the Kawartha Conservation year. So.
Thanks, Jeff. Appreciate that. You can tell Matthew that cultural coordinator sounds better than guru. So I'm glad we got his title straight. I appreciate that. Director Dunn, you had a question. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just going to comment that I like this one much better than the one the provincial government et al. Have been reading forever, because there's actually an action item here. And the standard one that you hear them read to me was always, because it didn't say it, like it said a lot of words, but it didn't do anything. This one's actually got some meat on the bone, and it's something that I could appreciate and get behind.
Thank you for that. Director Hooper, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. And I kind of like to echo my previous precedent statements in regards to that. We have a statement that we worked our way through at the municipality with Dave Mowat. And I like the questions afterwards, because we are struggling with that. We read it at every meeting, and you kind of wonder to yourself, I wonder if people are really getting anything out of this statement being said. And if you ask the question at the end, I think it's a really good opportunity for people to understand, and try to figure out. And I really appreciate the effort that went into this. Thanks very much.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a great complement to the Conservation Authority and, the land and the water and everything else. I really like that we're going to use it, well, hopefully on, a website, on some of our documents. I think that gives it, more meaning, or whether it's our strategic plan or in some of, even on our agenda, there's no reason it couldn't be, right at the top on our agenda, almost as part of our letterhead. And I just think the more, that's there and goes back to those original comments, instead of just being read all the time, it's part of sort of who we are and what we're trying to do. And I just think it gives it more meaning. So I really like the direction you're going here. Thank you. Any other questions for Mark or Jeff? Okay, we have a motion that resolved that the First Nations acknowledgement be endorsed for use immediately is the recommended motion.
I'll do that.
Director Windover, you'll move that, and Director Moore
I'll
will
second
that. Thank you, Catherine. Any other questions on that report? Anyone opposed to that motion? We'll consider that passed. Thank you for all the work for everyone that went into that. Appreciate it. Item 8.2 is our administration bylaw number 2 update. Mark, go ahead.
Great, thank you, Mr. Chair. This, as I mentioned earlier, was an outcome of the Conservation Ontario Council meeting, where the base kind of sample bylaw was updated, and what happens is, after that, each of the conservation authorities look at their individual bylaws, which may differ slightly, and integrate those changes into their bylaws. So this is the culmination of that. The primary reason why this is being updated is the change to the Conservation Authorities Act to allow for ministerial zoning permits and permissions issued, which follows special rules. The special rule specifically is that in a traditional sense, when a hearing is held to approve or deny a permit, there's that privilege for our board of directors, or any of the ones in Conservation Ontario or conservation authorities across Ontario, is to deny a permit. But with ministerial zoning orders, the only ability for a board of directors is to approve the permit with or without conditions. So with that, of course, the frame of reference for the bylaws have to change slightly to accommodate that, and so those are incorporated within the bylaws. There's a few administrative components that are changed as well, just some minor improvements in terms of wording or clarification, and then the other aspect that was changed was the Ontario Land Tribunal, with the amalgamation of the 5 different land tribunals in Ontario. Ontario. The updates reflect that change as well, with one exception that I noticed because it's in a graphic, but we'll change that as well before going out to posting it on our website. Is in the very last components, there's the charts that outline the process, and I noticed the MLT, Mining and Lands Commissioner, which was the old term, should be Ontario Land Tribunal. So, but that summarizes all the changes which are identified in red in the document itself and summarized in the report.
Thanks, Mark. Any questions for Mark on the bylaw number 2 update? Okay, recommended motion, resolve that the amendments to bylaw number 2 hearing guidelines to reflect changes to the Conservation Authority Act and related legislation be approved and adopted for use effective December 1st, 2021. Moved by Director Smith, thank you. Seconded by Director Kiesenbrink, thank you. Last chance for questions. Anyone opposed to that motion? That's passed. Thanks for that, Mark. And item 8.3 is our Conservation Authorities Act amendments, the transition plan. I know we talked about this before, but go ahead, Mark.
Yep, thank you, Mr. Chair. So this report here, it's really geared towards the Conservation Authorities Act changes and the timelines that were identified in the regulations. So by December 31st, all conservation authorities had to develop a transition plan, and that plan really is a high-level summary of the steps to be taken to get to the signing of agreements with municipalities by January 1st, 2024. So this outlines that summary, and it also includes the interim step, which is the identification of the inventory of programs and services, and that is due February 28th. So this board report outlines the process that was kind of outlined in a general form in the regulations, put into a little bit of a graphic for everyone just to identify where we are. We've had some initial discussions with a few municipalities. I've been keeping City of Kawartha Lakes involved in this, and we had a coordination meeting early on with the region of Durham as well, to look at transition plans and also look at inventory of services and what that might look like. There's still a ton of discussions yet to happen, and so what I've done in this report is really maxed out the timeframes in order to make things workable. So that's really the summary of the transition plan, which is attached to the report as well.
Thank you. You're comfortable we can hit all these timelines, Mark?
I'm as comfortable as I can at this point in time.
I don't think you have a lot of options, do you? So we need to make it work. Thank you. Any questions for Mark on the transition report? Okay, recommended resolution, resolve that the draft transition plan be approved, that the transition plan be distributed to participating municipalities, the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks, made publicly available and conform to criteria as prescribed in the regulations. Can I get a mover? Catherine Moore, will you move that?
I will.
Thank
Yes.
you. Second by Director Hooper. Any questions? Anyone opposed to that motion? That motion's passed. Thank you, Mark. New business. I don't believe we have any new business, Mark. Is there anything we need to update on?
No, I think we're good, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Reports and updates from board members. Anybody on the board want to update us on anything of importance? Director Hooper, go ahead.
Really have it's not an update. I just wondered if at some point I might be able to plug into as far as questioning some initiatives that Ms. Virgo has put on, in regards to the talking forest, the talking farm, whatever. We've had some serious issues in our Valleys 2000 project that we have ongoing, and we had some posts that had speakers and things and we've had some significant damage done to them for the second time. And so I'm trying to assist the people that run that particular project in regards to eliminating the damages. So I thought the app would be another way to go. So I just wanted to ask Ms. Virgo if it's okay if I call her at some point to inquire.
I think you're getting a head nod that would be just fine. I'm sure she'd be happy to work with you to make that work. Thank you. Okay.
Sorry, it's not an update.
No problem. Thanks. Any other updates? Okay. That's item 10. We do have a closed session. I believe one quick update and close. So at this point, we're going to go into closed session. So I guess I need to ask anybody who doesn't need to be in closed session. We need to go off YouTube. We need to, I'll leave it to you, Mark, to decide who needs to be on. So why don't we take 5 minutes? 2:10.